I was looking around a general's office when a photo on his desk stopped me cold. A young girl. One look and I knew exactly who she was. Imagine standing face to face with a man who holds immense power, a decorated general, only to have your entire world shatter because of a photograph on his desk. Picture of a little girl whose face I knew, whose eyes I remembered. And then he looked at me, a flicker of raw hope and pain in his eyes, and whispered, "You mean my lost daughter?" It was a cold, hard gut punch, a moment where everything I, Major Sarah Collins, believed about discipline and duty just collapsed. My morning had started like any other. Coffee at 0600. Uniform pressed. Inspection orders neatly folded in my pocket. I was assigned to Fort Hood for a 3-month internal audit, standard base inspection. Nothing personal. Until my eyes landed on that photograph. A little girl, maybe 6. Brown curls, blue eyes, so bright, so familiar. And then the world went silent. I froze because I knew that face. The inspection folder slipped from my hand, scattering papers. My throat tightened as I stepped closer. The frame was silver, engraved with a single word, Emily. She was clutching a small stuffed marine bear, smiling. My pulse hammered so hard it drowned out the ticking wall clock. "Something wrong, Major Collins?" General Robert Alden's voice cut through the air, sharp but cautious. I swallowed hard and turned. "Sir, this girl, this child in the photo?" I pointed, my hand trembling despite my years of training. He stepped forward, curious at first, then tense. "What about her?" "She lived with me. In the orphanage. Back in Texas." His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. His lips parted, trembling before he found his voice. "You mean, my missing daughter?" He looked at me as though I dragged a ghost into the room. I didn't know what to say. I was a Marine trained to confront chaos, not heartbreak. But standing there, the silence felt heavier than any battlefield I'd ever crossed. He motioned me to sit. "Tell me exactly what you mean, Major." I took a breath. "Sir, that girl Emily. I knew her as Lily. We grew up together in St. Mary's Orphanage, Waco. She was about my age. She came there when we were 6. The general's jaw clenched. "How can that be possible? Emily was taken from a park in Dallas 20 years ago. She was 4. I met his gaze. "Then she must have been found, sir." "Found and renamed." For a long time neither of us spoke. The office clock ticked between us, steady, unfeeling. Then the general walked to the window, his reflection faint against the Texas sunlight. "I searched for years," he said quietly. "Private investigators, military contacts, even federal channels. They found nothing. My wife died thinking she was dead." He turned to me, eyes wet but steady. "And now you tell me she lived." I nodded slowly. "I can't be sure, sir, but those eyes. I'd stake my life on it." He exhaled hard, the kind of exhale that sounds like surrender. "Tell me about her. What do you remember?" I told him about Lily's soft voice, her quiet laughter, her habit of tracing airplane shapes in the dust on our dormitory windows. How she'd hum old hymns when the younger kids cried. And then I mentioned it, a tiny crescent birthmark near her neck. The general's hand went to his chest. Emily had the same mark. He sat heavily behind his desk, all authority gone. "Major Collins, if you're right, if my daughter was alive all these years, then someone kept her from us." His tone hardened. "And I intend to find out who." I hesitated. "Sir, with respect, this might go deeper than either of us think. Adoption files, sealed transfers. It won't be easy." He looked up, his eyes lifting to mine, sharp again. Command restored. "You're a Marine, aren't you? Then we do not quit when something isn't easy." That sentence, simple, firm, lit something in me I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, but a righteous determination. When I left his office, the sun outside felt hotter, the air thicker. My boots hit the pavement in perfect rhythm, but my mind replayed the photograph. Could it really be her, Lily? The girl who'd shared her half of a peanut butter sandwich. The one who'd whispered, "Someday we'll both get out of here." I remembered the last time I saw her. We were 12. I'd been adopted by a family in Dallas. She'd hugged me tight, tears streaking her cheeks. "Write to me," she'd said. I promised I would. I never did. Duty had carried me far from that orphanage, from Texas to Okinawa to Quantico. But guilt travels faster than any deployment. Now, 2 decades later, her face had found me again, smiling from a frame in a general's office. That night I couldn't sleep. I'd always believed the Corps taught me everything about loyalty and courage. But now, I understood some battles aren't fought for your country. They're fought for the truth. And sometimes that truth waits in silence for years, like a photograph on a desk, until someone dares to look closely enough to see what's been lost. The mission had begun. The next morning I arrived at the base before sunrise. I'd spent the night replaying every memory of Lily. I needed to be sure this wasn't some cruel trick of resemblance. When I walked into the general's office, he was already there, standing by the same window, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Major Collins," he said quietly, "close the door." I did. He gestured to a chair. "You said you knew my daughter as Lily. Tell me everything from the beginning." "She came to the orphanage when I was 6, I began. She didn't talk much at first. The sisters said she'd been found near a gas station outside Waco. She didn't remember her last name. They called her Lily because she had a flower stitched on her jacket." The general stared down at his clasped hands. "Emily loved lilies," he whispered. "She used to pick them for her mother every Sunday after church." That silence again, the kind that fills a room like fog. "She was the kindest kid there," I continued softly. "She'd fix other children's toys, share food, comfort the ones who cried at night. The staff said she'd been through something traumatic, but she smiled anyway. That's what I remember most. She smiled through everything." The general rubbed his temples. "I spent 20 years wondering if she was alive. And you're telling me she was smiling in an orphanage 3 hours away?" There was no accusation, only heartbreak. "I didn't know, sir. I swear I didn't know who she really was." He nodded slowly. "Of course you didn't. You were a child." Then his eyes lifted to mine, sharp again. Command restored. "Do you still have any contact with the orphanage?" "I haven't been there since I joined the Marines, but I can go back." He exhaled deeply. "Do it discreetly. No press, no channels. If someone hid her, I don't trust the bureaucracy to tell me the truth." I hesitated. "Sir, I'll need authorization." "I'll take care of the paperwork," he interrupted. "You take care of finding out what happened." I gave a short nod. "Yes, sir." He walked to his desk, pulled out an old envelope. A faded photo. Him, his late wife, and a little girl holding a toy airplane. "Keep this," he said quietly, "in case you need confirmation." I studied the photo. Lily's eyes were unmistakable. The drive to Waco took 3 hours, but it felt like I was crossing 20 years. When I arrived, the orphanage looked smaller, red bricks chipped, sign faded. "St. Mary's Home for Children." The gate creaked open. Inside, the hall smelled of floor wax and dust. "Well, I'll be Sarah Collins." It was Sister Agnes, older now, but her eyes still kind. She hugged me tightly. "You've grown into such a fine woman, a Marine no less." "Still trying to earn my keep," I said with a smile. "You're not here for inspection, are you?" "No, sister. This is personal." Her face softened, then saddened. "I remember her," she said quietly. "Sweet girl, never caused trouble. Always drawing airplanes and flowers. She cried for her father every night at first. After a year she stopped." My throat tightened. "What happened to her?" "She was transferred. That's what the paperwork said. Houston Foster Care Program 2006. A new family supposedly, but we never got confirmation. Back then records were unreliable." "Do you still have her file?" Sister Agnes nodded and disappeared. She returned with a dusty brown folder. "Not much left. We lost most files in the flood 10 years ago." Inside, I found photocopies, medical forms, and one faded photo of Lily. On the back, in the sister's neat hand, "Transferred by request of State Social Services, Case ID 77HC. I snapped a photo with my phone. "Sister, who approved the transfer?" Her brows knit. "I don't remember the man's name. He wasn't one of ours. Military maybe. He wore a badge, not a collar." I froze. "Military?" "Yes." "Said it was part of an emergency relocation after a hurricane." "There was no hurricane in Texas that year," I whispered. Sister Agnes looked startled. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." For the first time, a cold certainty crawled up my spine. Someone had used military credentials to move Lily and hide her. When I thanked the sister and walked out, the late afternoon sun hit the building just right. The old bricks glowed amber. As I started my car, my phone buzzed. A message from General Alden. "Keep me updated. I've reopened my daughter's case file. And Major, be careful who you talk to. Some ghosts wear uniforms." I looked at the orphanage in my rearview mirror. "Yes, sir," I whispered. Because he was right. Some ghosts don't haunt cemeteries. They haunt paperwork. And I was about to wake them up. I drove away from Waco with the folder sitting on the passenger seat like a silent passenger. Every few miles I glanced at it, brown edges curling, the word "confidential" stamped in red ink. I'd handled classified intelligence in combat zones, but nothing felt heavier than that thin file. The highway stretched wide and endless under the Texas sun. With every passing mile, I felt like I was driving deeper into my own past. Duty gave me a new name, a new spine, a new life. But life has a way of dragging your history back into the light when you least expect it. By the time I reached my quarters at Fort Hood, it was nearly dusk. I typed in the little information I had. Case ID 77HC Houston Foster Care Program 2006. Nothing. No digital record, no archived file. It was as if Lily had vanished twice. I sent a secure military message to an old contact, Captain Elena Brooks, now working in the JAG office at the Pentagon. Need access to Restricted Relocation Archives 2006, Code 77HC. Possible military involvement. Quiet request. A reply came 5 minutes later. You realize this could be above clearance level. Then find someone whose clearance is higher, I typed back. I hesitated before hitting send. But then I saw Lily's face in my mind, smiling, trusting, unaware of the world's cruelty. I hit enter. The next morning I returned to the orphanage. Sister Agnes was outside. Back so soon? She asked. I need to look through old storage, I said. Boxes, receipts, letters, anything from 2006. She nodded. In the dusty basement, I found an envelope labeled Metropolitan Social Relief Program Emergency Evacuation Order. Stamped at the top, U.S. Department of Defense Temporary Relief Initiative. The date matched Lily's transfer. Inside was a list. One line was clear. Child ID 217L. FEMA relocation. Guardian request pending. Next to it a faint signature, M. Matthews. Sister Agnes leaned over. We never saw those papers. They just showed up one day with the men who took her. The men? Yes, 2 of them, both in uniform. They said she was being transferred for her safety. Safety from what? She shook her head. They never said. That night, I sat in my car outside the orphanage. My phone buzzed. Elena's message, got something. The relocation order code 77HC was processed through a defense logistics branch in Killeen, handled by Colonel M. Matthews, U.S. Army, retired 2010. Address attached. Proceed carefully. He's well connected. I stared at the screen. Colonel M. Matthews. That name felt like a locked door I'd just been handed the key to. I copied the address. Georgetown. An hour from the base. I should have waited for authorization, but this wasn't an official mission. It was personal. The next morning, in civilian clothes, I drove to Georgetown. Colonel Matthews answered the door. Late 70s, trim, still carried himself like a soldier. His handshake was firm but cold. Major Collins, you said. I retired years ago. What's this about? Relocation orders, I said evenly. 2006, Texas region. A program that involved a little girl from Waco. He frowned, pretending to search his memory. You'll have to be more specific. Case ID 77HC, I said, watching his face. His pupils contracted, just a flicker but enough. Never heard of it, he replied, stepping back. Now if you'll excuse me, I blocked the door with my boot. Sir, I'm not here to cause trouble, but I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. He glared. You're out of line, Marine? Maybe. But I buried too many truths in the name of following orders. Not this one. He motioned me inside. The living room smelled of cigar smoke and lemon polish. That file should have stayed buried, he muttered. So, it exists, I said quietly. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. You're chasing something that will break a lot of people if you dig too deep. Was it your idea to move her? He sighed. No. Orders came from above. Said it was for national security. National security? She was a child. Matthews's eyes hardened. Not my decision. My job was to follow through. Whose decision then? He hesitated. The request came through a classified channel. Office of Strategic Infrastructure. You'll find nothing online. They made sure of that. He refilled his glass. That girl. She looked scared when they took her. Kept asking for someone named Tessa. I froze. That was me. He turned. Then you already know too much. Before I could respond, he took a long drink and whispered, Be careful who you serve, Major. Some commands come from men who've forgotten what honor means. I left his house with my pulse hammering. I had my first lead and my first enemy. By the time I got back to the base, the Texas sky had turned the color of gunmetal. Colonel Matthews's words echoed, Some commands come from men who've forgotten what honor means. That was a warning and I knew it. I opened my laptop. Buried deep in an old database, I found a memo. Confidential Infrastructure Recovery Operations, July 2006. Signature line, M. Matthews, DLD. Underneath, 3 initials caught my eye, HV. I didn't need to guess. My father had spoken the name before he died. Harold Vance, now a powerful Undersecretary of Defense. He and Alden had served together, but their paths diverged. Alden took the moral route, Vance the political. If Matthews took orders from Vance, this went far beyond a misplaced orphan file. I called General Alden. Sir, it's Collins. I found something. Harold Vance, he said. You knew. I suspected, sir. He's still in Washington. You think he'd risk exposure now? Men like Vance don't see risk, Collins. They see leverage. He exhaled slowly. Listen, Major. This stops being an inspection now. This is intelligence. You tread carefully. I'll reopen my daughter's case quietly through personal channels. Yes, sir. After the call, I stared at the phone. Intelligence. That word changed everything. In my world, intelligence meant shadows, power, and the kind of secrets that swallowed people whole. The storm broke just after midnight. Rain hit the barracks roof like gravel. I couldn't sleep, so I opened the old folder again. Beneath the paperwork from St. Mary's was something I hadn't noticed. An unmarked envelope. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed letterhead, Department of Defense Emergency Operations Division. A memo addressed to Colonel Matthews. Subject, reassignment of minor ID 217. Now. Directive, proceed under civilian cover. No further record to be maintained. Authorization code HVTXOPS. No name, no signature, just those initials again. TV. I felt the hair rise on my neck. Whoever HV was, he had the power to make a child vanish without a trace, and the arrogance to sign it like a stamp of ownership. I scanned the document, encrypted it on a flash drive. Then I did something reckless. I called Captain Elena Brooks again. Elena, I need a favor. You already got one, she said dryly. What is this really about, Sarah? A child. A missing girl. A cover-up tied to a defense project from 2006. There was a pause. You're talking about a ghost program. Then tell me how to find a ghost. Carefully, she said, and quietly. I'll run your memo through an old clearance pathway. But if you're right about Vance, you could be putting a target on your back. I've had worse. After the call, I sat there listening to the rain. I should have felt fear, but instead I felt calm, focused, the same stillness I used to feel before stepping into a combat zone. Only this time the enemy wasn't across a desert. He was behind a desk. The next morning I met General Alden again. He looked different, tired but steadier. Resolve in his eyes. I handed him the flash drive. Sir, this is the memo that links Matthews to Vance. He plugged it into his laptop, scrolled through the scanned image and went pale. Authorization code HVTX-OPS. He used an operational seal that was shut down in 2004. Meaning? Meaning he revived a dead program under a fake directive. No oversight, no accountability. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. You understand what this means, don't you? If this comes out, it'll shake half of Washington. With respect, sir, I said quietly. I don't care about Washington. I care about Emily. He looked at me, a flicker of pride. You sound like her mother. He stood and walked to the window. You've done enough. Let me handle it from here. I shook my head. Sir, you can't do this alone. Whoever covered this up still has resources. We need evidence. Proof she was transferred, not lost. He turned, voice low but fierce. What are you suggesting? Let me talk to Matthews again. This time off record. He hesitated. If you push him, he'll push back. I'm a Marine, sir. I know how to handle pressure. 2 nights later, I drove to Georgetown again. The street was empty when I walked up to Matthews's house. When he opened the door, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Major Collins, he said, voice rough. You should have stayed out of this. Too late, I replied. I found the memo. He froze. Then you know what it means. I know it means someone used your authority to cover up a kidnapping. He shook his head violently. You don't understand. That order wasn't mine. I was told to sign it or lose everything. My pension, my record. They said the girl was under federal protection, that her father was compromised. Her father was a Marine general, not a criminal. Matthews's expression cracked. I didn't know that. I swear I didn't. He sank into his chair, trembling. I thought I was helping a child, not burying one. I pulled out my recorder. Say that again. He stared at the blinking red light. You think a confession will change anything? Vance still sits in DC untouchable. People like me, people who followed orders, were the ones who pay. Then help me make him pay. For a moment he didn't move. Then quietly he nodded. You'll find what you're looking for in Logistics Archives, Houston Branch. Box 47C. I can't get you in, but you can. You still wear the uniform. He pushed a folded piece of paper across the table. A key card. It'll work once. Don't come back here after you use it. I stood. Thank you, Colonel. He didn't look up. Don't thank me, Major. Pray I never have to see that little girl's eyes again in my sleep. Outside the rain had stopped. The moon cut through the clouds like a blade, and the air smelled of wet earth and second chances. By the next morning, the Texas sky was washed clean. I'd memorized every document I'd photographed, every name, every code. I could still see that red line stamped across the file, authorized by Colonel M. Vance. It burned in my mind like an open wound. Detective Ramos met me in the parking lot, a tall man in a plain brown jacket. Major Collins, he said, shaking my hand. You've stirred up a hornet's nest. Story of my life, I smiled. He opened a folder. I went through the archives you mentioned. St. Mary's was part of a foster system audit in 2007. 6 kids were listed as transferred to Houston, but only 5 arrived. One name missing from the log, Lily Carter. I exhaled. That's her. That's Emily Alden. Ramos nodded. Here's the kicker. The transfer was signed by a deputy coordinator, Harold Vance. It was an internal document never meant for public record. So, he used his military credentials to move a child off the grid. Ramos looked grim. And then erased her. We drove to Matthews's house that afternoon. The front blinds were drawn tight. No movement. I knocked. No answer. The third time the door creaked open a few inches. Colonel Matthews. I called out. Silence. Ramos drew his weapon. We entered cautiously. The house smelled of stale bourbon and old smoke. A lamp was knocked over, a picture frame shattered. Matthews was slumped in his chair, head tilted. Empty pill container on the table. No pulse. Ramos swore softly. Suicide. Maybe, I said. But look. Pinned to Matthews's shirt pocket was a note. 4 words, shaky handwriting. I tried to warn you. At the precinct, Ramos's contacts processed the scene. The official story would say overdose. But both of us knew better. Someone had gotten to him first. I left Houston that night. Matthews's death changed everything. Now it wasn't just about a missing girl. It was about silencing anyone who got too close. When I got back to Fort Hood, I went straight to the general's quarters. He was sitting in his study. Matthews is dead, I said quietly. He froze, whiskey glass halfway to his lips. How? Pills? But I think it was staged. He left a note. Alden set the glass down. Vance, he whispered. Sir, he knows we're close. I think he sent someone after the files. You're not safe here. He gave a faint, weary smile. Major, I stopped being safe 20 years ago. I took the photo of Lily Emily from my jacket and laid it on his desk. I found this in the Houston archive. There's proof of the relocation. Vance's signature. He stared at it for a long time. Then his hand went to his face, covering his eyes. I heard a sound I hadn't heard from him before, a low, broken sob. When he finally looked up, tears streaked his weathered face. My God, she's alive. We can't be sure yet, I said softly. But the trail's warm. He nodded slowly, pulling himself back together. Then we follow it. Where does it lead? Vance, I said simply. All the way to DC. 2 days later, we landed at Andrews Air Force Base under the guise of a logistics audit. General Alden had enough clearance to keep us off the radar. Captain Brooks met us outside the Pentagon. You two are insane. You realize what happens if you accuse an undersecretary without hard proof. I've got proof, I said. A signed authorization of death. In 20 years of silence. She sighed. Then I hope you've got more than that, because Vance has friends who can erase you before breakfast. We don't need his friends, the general said evenly. We just need 5 minutes in his office. We got those 5 minutes barely. Vance's office was immaculate. He looked up as we entered, recognition flickering briefly in his sharp gray eyes. Robert, he said smoothly. I was told you retired. Not yet, Alden replied. I had a few loose ends. Vance's gaze shifted to me. And who is this? Major Sarah Collins, I said evenly. U.S. Marine Corps. I think we've met, at least on paper. He smiled faintly. I doubt it. What can I do for you, Major? I slid the photo of Lily across his desk. You can start by explaining this. His eyes flicked down for just a second. Pretty girl, he said, his tone casual. What about her? She was relocated under your directive. Code HVTX Ops. He leaned back, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. That program was classified. You have no authority to access those files. I have all the authority I need. She was a child, not a classified asset. Vance's jaw tightened. You have no idea what you're meddling with. The world isn't black and white, Major. Sometimes we bury things for a reason. Then let's unbury them. He stood, towering over his desk. You think you can threaten me? You'll be stripped of your commission before the week's out. The general rose, his voice low but full of steel. Try it. But know this, Harold. If my daughter's name is anywhere in your files, I'll drag you before Congress myself. For the first time the mask slipped. A flash of fear. Or was it guilt? You can't prove anything. Alden smiled faintly. That's the thing about men who hide behind secrets. Eventually someone like her, he nodded toward me, shines a light. Vance's voice dropped to a hiss. You don't know what you're starting. I met his gaze squarely. Yes, I do. I'm starting justice. We walked out before he could answer. Outside, the afternoon sun blazed across the marble steps, bright enough to sting the eyes. The general stopped, took a deep breath and said quietly, He's cracking. He knows it's over. Not yet, sir, I said. But soon. That night, back at the temporary quarters, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed at 2:01 a.m. An unknown number. If you want to find the girl, go to Lake Charles, Louisiana. Ask for Lily Carter. Don't tell Alden. Don't tell anyone. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Could be a trap. Or it could be the lead we'd been praying for. Either way, I was going. I left before dawn, driving south on the empty highway with the first light of morning chasing my taillights. I didn't tell the general. I didn't tell Brooks or Ramos. Whoever sent that message knew where to find me. And that meant time wasn't on my side. The air grew heavier as I crossed into Louisiana. The address led to a small lakeside town called Moss Bluff. Quiet, almost forgotten. I parked near the old dock. Across the road stood a white wooden house with a crooked mailbox. The name on it stopped me cold. Carter. I knocked. The door opened a few inches. A woman in her late 40s peered out, tired eyes, kind face. Can I help you? Ma'am, I'm looking for someone named Lily Carter. She froze. Who's asking? My name is Major Sarah Collins, U.S. Marine Corps. I knew her when she was a little girl. Her expression softened slightly. She opened the door wider. Come in. The living room smelled of lemon polish and old wood. Pictures lined the walls. Birthdays, holidays. A smiling young woman with light brown curls and eyes the color of sky after rain. Lily. Older now, maybe 18 or 19. Unmistakably the same face from the photo I carried in my pocket. She's at work, the woman, Mrs. Carter, said quietly. Community hospital, just outside town. Who are you to her? Someone who's been searching a long time, I said. Mrs. Carter studied me. You're not the first. A man came by last year, said he was a lawyer from Washington. Asked questions about her adoption. She didn't want to talk to him. My throat tightened. Did he leave a name? No, but he scared her. I exhaled. Then I'll do my best not to. Mrs. Carter gave a faint smile. Then maybe it's good you came. Lily's different. Always has been. Nightmares when she was little. Couldn't remember her early years. Said she dreamed about men in uniforms, about a big house with a flag outside. My chest tightened. She remembers. Mrs. Carter nodded. She doesn't know why. The hospital sat at the edge of town. I walked in and asked for Lily Carter. They pointed me to physical therapy. When I saw her, my breath caught. She was standing by the window, sunlight in her hair, helping an older veteran through balance exercises. Her voice was calm, steady, professional, but warm. When the session ended, I approached slowly. Lily? She turned, curious. Up close, it was undeniable. The eyes, the soft jawline. My name's Sarah Collins, I said quietly. I knew you once when you were little. She tilted her head, uncertain. I'm sorry, I don't remember you. That's okay, I said. There's a lot you weren't supposed to remember. Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear. Or recognition. What do you mean? I reached into my jacket and handed her the photo. The one from the Houston file. That's you. She stared at it. Her hands trembled. Where did you get this? It was part of a classified government record. A relocation file. You were taken from your real family when you were 6 years old. She shook her head. No, that can't be. I took a deep breath. Your real name is Emily Alden. Your father's a retired Marine general. He's been looking for you for nearly 20 years. Her breath hitched. That's impossible. I wish it were. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't remember any of that. You wouldn't? They erased it. But the pieces are still there. The nightmares, the flag, the uniforms. She pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes unfocused. Sometimes I see a man's face in my dreams. Silver hair, blue eyes. He's always calling me Emmy. I thought I made it up. I swallowed hard. You didn't. We sat on a bench outside overlooking the lake. Why would anyone do that to a child? She whispered. Power, I said simply. Your father uncovered something that threatened the wrong people. They couldn't touch him, so they took what he loved most. She turned to me, eyes shining. And you? How did you find me? I smiled faintly. By refusing to stop. She gave a watery laugh. You sound like a Marine. I am. Then you know what it's like, she whispered. To lose people and keep going anyway. Yes, I said softly. But you didn't just survive, Emily. You built a life. You helped people heal. That strength they can't take away. She nodded slowly, tears running freely now. I want to see him, she said. My father. I pulled out my phone. He'll be on the next flight. When General Alden arrived that evening, I waited near the lake while Lily stood on the dock, her hands clasped tightly. He walked toward her, stiff at first. A soldier facing his own ghost. Emily, his voice cracked on the name. She turned. For a heartbeat they just stared. Years of pain, hope, and disbelief colliding in silence. Then she ran to him. He caught her, held her like he was afraid she'd vanish again. His shoulders shook, his metals glinting in the dying light. I looked everywhere, he whispered. Everywhere. I know, she sobbed. I think I always knew. I turned away, giving them privacy. The sun slipped behind the trees, turning the water to gold. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers like the wind across a lake, reminding you that peace doesn't come from victory. It comes from truth. The following weeks unfolded like a strange dream. Part triumph, part reckoning. The headlines hit first. Undersecretary Harold Vance resigns amid federal probe. Then came the leaks, the internal memos, the classified transfers, the testimonies. I watched the news one night from my on-base quarters, coffee growing cold in my hands, as an anchor said the words I'd waited 2 decades for someone to say. Vance is accused of authorizing the abduction and relocation of a minor, the daughter of then Major General Robert Alden, in retaliation for an internal corruption investigation. For the first time, the nation heard what had been whispered in shadows. For the first time, Emily's name, her real name, was spoken out loud, not as a missing child but as a survivor. When I visited the Aldens' home a week later, the house felt lighter. There were photos on the mantel again, new ones. Emily and her father at the lake, smiling with the tentative joy of people relearning each other's faces. The general opened the door himself. His posture was straighter, his eyes softer. Major Collins, he said, voice full of warmth. Come in. There's someone waiting for you. Emily was sitting in the sunroom, sketching. When she saw me, she stood quickly. You really came. I promised, I said. She laughed, a sound that hadn't existed the first time I met her by that lake. You know, every night since I've tried to remember more, and sometimes I do. Pieces. The smell of the bass, the sound of engines, my mother's voice. It's like the world is giving them back to me one by one. That's how healing works, I said quietly. Memory doesn't return all at once. It rebuilds itself like muscle after a wound. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. I still can't believe anyone would go to all that trouble to hide me. I looked toward the general. Power has always feared innocence, but it underestimated Marines. He chuckled. It usually does. A month later, I was called to D.C. to testify before a Senate committee. The hearing room was crowded with press and officials. Major Collins, one of them said, "Why did you continue investigating after your superior officers told you to stand down?" I met his gaze. Because a little girl's life mattered more than my career. The room went silent. When it was over, I stepped outside. The Capitol dome gleamed. I looked up and whispered, Semper Fidelis. Always faithful. Not just to command but to conscience. The following evening, I received an unexpected package. Inside, a silver pendant, the kind issued to children at St. Mary's Orphanage long ago. On the back, engraved in small letters, EA 2006. Emily's initials. I smiled. Maybe she'd found it among her things. Maybe she just wanted me to have something to remember this by. It felt like a full circle. Weeks turned to months. The investigation widened. Vance's allies fell one by one. Each indictment, another small victory for those who still believed honor could outlive politics. I returned to duty but requested reassignment. Paperwork and command desks didn't suit me anymore. I transferred to a Veterans Outreach Division, helping young Marines transition home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Every now and then I'd get a letter from Emily, or rather Lily Emily Carter Alden as she signed it now. She'd stayed in Louisiana working at the hospital but was planning to start nursing school. Her last letter ended with, "You once told me truth deserves daylight even if it burns. I think you were right, but sunlight also heals." I kept that one pinned above my desk. One summer evening, General Alden invited me back to Texas. He was waiting by the hangar wearing civilian clothes for once, looking 10 years younger. "Emily's inside. She wanted to show you something." Inside, a restored training aircraft, its metal gleaming under the lights. On the side, painted in neat script, were 3 words, "Honor Line for Sarah." I froze. "She wanted to name it after what she calls the line that connects all of us," the general said quietly. "The line between duty and mercy, between truth and power." Emily climbed down from the cockpit, grinning. "We're calling it the Honor Line Project. Dad's helping me get veterans involved in aviation rehab therapy. You helped us both find something worth building again." For a long moment I couldn't speak. Then I just hugged her, a simple human gesture that said everything words couldn't. That night as I drove back to base, I pulled over near the old memorial wall. The stars were bright above the Texas sky. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted by ghosts. I thought of everyone who'd risked something to make truth matter. I thought of Emily's laughter by the lake. And I realized something. Revenge had never been the point. It had only been the spark that lit the path toward redemption. Justice didn't look like vengeance. It looked like a father holding his daughter again. It looked like a survivor choosing to forgive a world that had forgotten her. And for me it looked like peace. If you've listened this far, if you've walked with me through the storms, the silence, and the truth, then maybe you know what I've learned. We can't always undo what's been broken. But we can stand for what's right. Even when no one's watching. Even when it costs us. Because sometimes the smallest act, opening a box, asking a question, refusing to look away, can bring light to places that have been dark for too long. So, wherever you are tonight, remember this. Honor isn't about the medals we wear. It's about the promises we keep. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes that truth still matters. Subscribe, stay with us, and keep the honor line alive. Because some stories don't end. What part of this story resonated most with you? Let me know in the comments below.